Well, how was that meal, huh? Chartwell's, Dr. Taylor, in his pocket. Yeah, they are great, huh? Great food. Congratulations. And thank you, President Taylor, for being here and being so supportive of this worthy organization. And you know what would be neat? If somebody, as a dream, could do something about putting those red lights at the top of this building that shine when Lamar wins. Wouldn't that be neat? He told him that dream is already in the works. So isn't that wonderful? Yeah, not tomorrow, but in the works. Gosh, it's so nice to be back to this celebration. What happened the last 2 years? Hmm. What a weird, that came out of nowhere, didn't it? We shut the courts down. Oh my gosh, Harris County, 254 counties were shut down for a while, and now we're playing catch up. Right, Judge, in Harris County, my goodness. But weird things happen during that time. Whoever thought you could go into a bank wearing a mask, demanding money, and they were happy to see you? I don't understand. It's kind of a weird thing. Bob Wortham. There he is, and Karen. It's a little lovely. Beauty and the Beast, we call them. It's a fairy tale story. Our district attorney. An interesting story happened. He ventured out. He said, I'm going to go to HEB. Remember that story? And Karen says, you got to wear the gloves and the mask. Make sure you do. He goes there, calls her back, and says, hey, everybody else is wearing clothes. Our district. There's his son, Baylor, Judge Wortham. No, Bob doesn't do that sort of thing. Weird things happen with government leadership during that period of time. Yeah, it goes without saying sometimes. But you remember, we were all quarantined. And they said, quarantine your animals, your pets. Remember that? And then the pets, the World Health Organization says the pets can be released, but we have to stay quarantined. But it answered that age-old riddle: who let the dogs out? And all of us were told, don't touch your face. Don't touch your face. Wayne came up with a great idea. He said, just carry 2 glasses of wine in each hand, and that'll prevent you from touching your face. So you have to be creative and industrious, and there's the man who can do that. Before dinner, we heard from Reverend Adolph, my good friend, and my neighbor. I jogged by his house, and he hollers, faster. Faster as a run by. Marcy's riding the bike, and I'm running. And what a wonderful good friend and a good man. And he and I share a lot of ideals and the service to mankind. I just admire what he does. Interesting story, though. Not long ago, the Internal Revenue Service, you were telling me, the Internal Revenue Service called him, and they said, we were doing an audit here, and Robert Johnson, is he one of your parishioners? And he said, well, yes, he is. I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, he is. And they asked him, is it true he donated $20,000 to your church? And the Reverend said, no, he didn't, but he will. And man, there's the guy you need to pump up the bucks for Lamar University. We are here to honor educators. I fell in love and married an educator for over 40 years. Yeah. And checks roll every morning. And But education is so special to all of us in this room. It's so special to the world. Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. Mahatma Gandhi, of course. The goal of education is intelligence and character. Martin Luther King. Socrates said long ago, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but it is a fire to be kindled. Smart people. True to this day. Aristotle, the educated differ from the uneducated as much as the living differ from the dead. And being a government servant, it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt who is quoted as saying, democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely. The real safeguard of democracy, therefore, is in education. So, who are we to quarrel with great people who are so smart? We have so many special guests with us tonight. And thank you all for being here together so that we can honor these exceptional educators in this region. We want to also recognize the principals, superintendents, and other administrators of our honorees because they lead so well. Their names are listed in the back of your program. So thank you for being here to support your teachers. And we are very honored to have the 2020 recipients of the Reaud Excellence in Education Award here with us tonight. As you know, that event was canceled because of the pandemic. So those talented educators did not get to have their special evening, but they're sharing it with us tonight, some of them. Not all of the 2020 recipients are able to be here, but for those of you who are here, I'm going to call your name. Please stand so we can recognize you. Megan Smith. Nancy Green. Nancy Green. Lynn Jones. Lynn Jones. Donna Schrock. Donna Schrock. Vicky Mouton. Vicky Mouton. Ashley Ahrensberger. Ashley Ahrensberger. Misty Ballard. Misty Ballard. Kelsey Thibodeau. Kelsey Thibodeau. Angie Perry. Angie Perry. And I hope she was able to be here. Angela Lewis, I believe, is here tonight. Hey, Angela. I hope I didn't miss anyone. Is anyone else from the 2020 honorees who are here tonight? Well, congratulations to all of you, and thank you for being here. Now, before we get further, I guess you admired those outstanding portraits of our honorees during the reception. We want to thank the great, talented, the Michelangelo of photography, Brandon Gauthier, for his outstanding work. And he's got a great story. He went on a safari last year. A bad thing happened, but it all worked out. One of the team, he was with a group, and one of them was grabbed by a lion and was pulled. And the guy's hollering, Brandon, shoot, shoot. And he goes, I'm out of film. Maybe you don't want to hunt with Brandon. I don't know. Maybe that's it. At this time, I want to introduce my good friend Ed Keller, who is the president and CEO of the Beaumont Foundation. who is going to make some very important remarks and introduce our special guest speaker, my good friend, our Harris County Commissioner, and I will always call him Senator Rodney Ellis. I have known Ed Keller when I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and Ed, I was one of the prosecutors in the James Byrd murders, the first two, who have been brought to justice. Evil. They stood for evil. Ed and the FBI from Beaumont, we were called, and that phone, you never forget it. John, this is Janet Reaud. I mean, something bad has happened in Jasper, Texas. Go help those people. See that justice is done. Yes, ma'am. And Ed was the first guy who said, I'm ready, let's go. And it was a collaborative effort between the federal and state authorities, and called the trial of that century. But it was evil versus good, what we deal with every day. And good people have to stay vigilant and follow those ideals. That man stands for that. It was an honor working with Ed, a very good man, a wonderful family man. So, Ed Keller, come on up.
Good evening. Tonight, we celebrate the 13th Reaud Excellence in Education Awards Gala to honor deserving teachers. This program is possible because our chairman, Wayne Reaud, had a vision to recognize teachers who offer excellence far beyond what is expected of them. Chairman Reaud himself is a product of public schools. He fondly remembers the teachers that inspired and guided him at crucial times during his development. Mr. Reaud was very passionate not only to recognize great teachers, but also to clothe the poor and feed the hungry. Thank you, Mr. Reaud. As of this gala, 193 outstanding teachers have received the Reaud Excellence in Education Award. Adding up all of our teacher programs, the Beaumont Foundation has distributed $3.1 million in cash awards directly to teachers. This is truly a premier recognition program by any measure. Tonight, 15 winners will be honored. They are educators from Jefferson, Orange, Hardin, Tyler, Jasper, and Newton counties. Each will receive a $10,000 cash award, a commemorative photograph, and a crystal obelisk. I would like to now introduce tonight's speaker, Rodney Ellis. He's dynamic, he's influential, he's a born leader. He's a native Texan. He attended Texas public schools from grade school through law school. Rodney served 3 terms with the Houston City Council until elected to the Texas State Senate. For 26 years, Senator Ellis represented Texas' 13th State Senate District, and he passed over 700 bills and pieces of legislation. In 2016, Rodney became commissioner, was elected in Harris County, Precinct 1, a position he still holds today. He prioritizes inclusive economic growth and criminal justice reform that protects the rights of all people. He's an avid art collector, a cycling enthusiast. Rodney has served Texans in many capacities and his list of accomplishments, quite frankly, would take a much longer introduction. It is with great pleasure to introduce our friend, Commissioner/Senator Rodney Ellis.
Thank you, Ed. A second act, you could be in politics, Ed. You got that deep, rich voice. You look straight at the audience. But over here, I'm not sure you could win because Judge Stevens, let me tell you, his second act ought to be a comedy routine. Is he good? You talk about a great voice, a great career. Thank you. I want to start off by telling you how much the Beaumont Foundation matters and Wayne Reaud matters. Now, you may take him for granted because you see him around on a regular basis and he's such an institution here. But here's a guy, first of all, that had the intellect to decide when he settled a big case, and then you have this property when you go after some corporation that did something wrong, and you want to make sure they get it right. Well, he was going to win his case, so the corporation was smart as well. They decided to settle it. And then they were going to replace the defective product that most of us, many of us, purchased. So he had this brilliant idea. He would make his money. Other people who worked on the case will get the expenses, and they get paid. But when they do this recall, you have a lot of people who are going to get money, and then you have this unclaimed property. You call it unclaimed proceeds. And most of us, when you get those notices in the mail when somebody's been sued, sometimes you just don't file to get your money. So Mr. Reaud, for the first time in the history of America, decided he would take the unclaimed proceeds that belonged to somebody else because the company did something wrong and create a foundation. Now, I'm sure Mr. Reaud had some sense of how significant the settlement would be, but the corporation had no idea. That's what created the Beaumont Foundation. Now, I want to make that point on why he matters. That was intellect. That was brilliance to do that. He's one of the great lawyers in the historic Texas tobacco settlement that helped make people who put that poison in kindergartners' lungs when we didn't know any better. It was a popular thing to do. Perry, he was part of that team to sue the tobacco companies nationally. And that Texas settlement was major. He's been on the front line fighting for little people. And throughout his career, I mean, I happen to be a Democrat, not too popular to be one of those now. But historically, he was one of the largest donors to Democratic governors in the history of Texas. And now here's what's interesting. Here's a guy came from humble beginnings, made all of the money that you can think of, but he chooses, even now, to stay right here in Jefferson County and make his mark all around the country. So, you know, you can go online, but personally, I know what the work of the Beaumont Foundation has done. Teachers, I try to mentor young people. It's my way of paying back. This award is Mr. Reaud's and the Beaumont Foundation way of paying back. I have an internship program where I get these young kids and I put them in other legislators' offices, Democrats and Republicans. You know, no overhead. We give the money to the Mickey Leland Center over at Texas Southern. I was mentored by that congressman. And he told me once, he said, we need to have more young people like you, Rodney. I was young, Pastor, at one point. He said, we need to have more young people like you get in government. So he said, I'm going to go and talk to the president of Texas Southern and the University of Houston, and I'm going to get 10 kids. He wanted minority kids, black and Hispanic kids. He said, I'm going to put them around the U.S. Congress and other members' offices. You go raise the money. If you don't raise the money, I'm going to fire you. You pack your little Volkswagen up and go on back to Texas. So I learned to raise money. When I went to the Senate, I decided I'd try a similar program. And I was doing pretty good at it. And then I came over to make a pitch to Mr. Reaud. He hosted something at his home in Austin, Starla for the interns. And, he said, this is really a good thing you're doing, and I want to help you. So I made a pitch. He said, I'll pay for 25 students, but I want you to take Lamar students. I've taken one or two. I want you to take them from Baylor, I think Tech, Sam Houston, maybe Stephen F. Austin. And let me tell you, for at least a decade, you had another 25 students show up at the state capitol. One of your judges. I was proud to say, I can't remember his name, Mr. Reaud, Langston Adams from Port Arthur, who was a judge here. I led a program. Now we have 3 members of the State House, 1 city council member, 1 federal magistrate, all started out that program. It's stuff that most people don't think about that Wayne Reaud funds. So if you would, stand up and give Mr. Reaud a warm round of applause. We love you, Mr. Reaud. We love you, and we appreciate you. Thank you. Second point I want to make is Beaumont matters. Beaumont in particular, Jefferson County, but Beaumont. I'm 68 years old, born April 7th, 1954. Month after I was born, Thurgood Marshall won that case, Brown versus Board of Education. I'm 68 years old. So, Mr. Reaud, Brown would not have happened if it hadn't been for a significant case to integrate golf courses in Beaumont. So imagine, teachers, here's the brilliance. Here's these people walking around your classroom, here's who they are. It's Wayne Reaud, Thurgood Marshall. You never know what the next one may be, Judge Stevens. So Thurgood Marshall, because he probably learned from a teacher, go back. Brown versus Board of Education probably started maybe about 1949. About 1947 or so, you had a case called Sweat versus Painter. Here's my point. Thurgood Marshall knew you don't just go in here and try it in this country. Just go integrate the schools. Just go from total apartheid in America, segregation, to integrate kindergartens, elementary schools. That's too much for us, we Americans, to grapple with. So he started with universities. Sweat case created my undergraduate school. University of Texas created Texas State University for Negroes in 1947 to keep from having to integrate the University of Texas Law School. But even before that, Thurgood Marshall, you could do universities, that's okay. He decided to take on the case to integrate golf courses here in Beaumont. Now, I had no idea this case. I thought, Judge, I was a student of the law until Mr. Reaud gave me a book called Fairways. Because the Beaumont Foundation asked me to come over here many years ago to speak at a program where you all were putting a statue of the 2 black lawyers, first 2 key successful black lawyers in Jefferson County. And there's a statue of them in front of the Jefferson County Courthouse. Beaumont matters because of that case. This area is known for natural resources. I always enjoy coming to this room because you look over there, that's what Texas is all about. So in Houston, when we brag and say we're the energy capital of the world, we're getting it from here. You got me? But you matter. Obviously, in terms of natural resources, you're unparalleled. I took a trip one time. I listened to you, Pastor Adolph, talk about I think you're about to go to India. And you've been to Dubai. And I was thinking, I don't know how. Probably somebody turned down a junket in the Senate, and I went and ended up in Baku. couldn't sleep. So Mr. Reaud told me, man, Baku, that's just like Spindletop over here. It was going on at the same time. And then being up in the middle of the night, because Mr. Reaud just reads everything. One thing I like about him is when I can't sleep, I can call him 3 in the morning. He's up. Starla, I don't know how you sleep. You must have one of them white noise machines like I use. But I'm talking to Mr. Reaud, and then he was telling me about, this is an interesting footnote, which is similar to Beaumont. He was telling me about the Nobel Prize. You heard of the Nobel Peace Prize? You know what I'm talking about? Alfred Nobel made his initial money as an arms dealer. He didn't invent dynamite, but he took it to a whole different level. And he was pretty much an arms trader until he was successful with dynamite, blowing stuff up. And then he made his money in Baku. Spindletop was here, Baku was Spindletop over there. And then he's one of the few people in the world to read his obituary. They thought he died, and it was in the paper. Merchant of death, arms dealer, finally dies. He was so distraught. I get this from Wayne Reaud because he's up all night. Merchant of debt finally dies, and he was so hurt, so distraught over it, he decided, that's not how I want to be remembered. I want to change my image. So he created a series of prizes. One of them is the Nobel Prize. Now, who remembers that Alfred Nobel was a merchant of death? Third point I want to make, which is why we're here tonight. Teachers matter. 1 million people, at least. So we are now commemorating 1 million Americans. Best health care in the world. Strongest economy in the world. Strongest military force in the world. Even if we used it, we destroy the world. Because there are people who are not far behind us, like the folks in Russia. 1 million people have died. You have any idea what we've been through? Just think about it. People who are on the front line, first and foremost, are law enforcement. Healthcare people. Other ones on the front line, teachers. Even when the kids had to stay home, the rest of us could duck in our pajamas and get on the Zoom. You couldn't. It was stressful. Now, I want you to know, we're probably in the midst of the worst mental health crisis in the history of our country. Those kids that came back to you are damaged in ways we can't measure. Maybe damaged from COVID in ways we can't measure as well. But we as human beings were not intended to be isolated like this. It's not natural. We want to talk. We want to be around people. We're inspired, we're encouraged by human interaction. It's not natural for us. It goes against everything that we're accustomed to doing. But you teachers have had to take the brunt of this challenge, along with people in law enforcement and people in the healthcare field. And this is a way of thanking you, in particular, having come through this. Everybody in this room, including Mr. Reaud, my guest, I brought a judge from Harris County here that I think she was riding with me one day, and I was on the phone talking to Mr. Reaud. And she said, is that Wayne Reaud out of Beaumont? I said, yes, it is. She said, I'd never met him, but he paid for me to go to law school. So I said, Mr. Reaud, you know Judge Genesis Draper? He said, no, I don't. I said, let me put her on the phone. They spoke. She said, you know, I'm from Longview. I got in University of Texas Law School. My parents going to have trouble paying for it. Jack Strong, longtime state senator, knew her mother, called Wayne Reaud, and he paid. Never saw her. I suspect with the good manners she has, she sent him a note, but she never talked to him. And just by serendipity, she talked to Wayne Reaud. This is her second time meeting him in person. We were here for the Christmas party. Just Genesis Draper, misdemeanor criminal judge in Harris County. My other guest also is important as teachers, obviously, and comes out of law enforcement. Perry Turner, head at the FBI in his region for a number of years, well respected, knows Ed and a bunch of other folks. But Perry Turner, thank you for being on the front lines as well. But now, I'm going to tell you a story and wrap up on why you teachers matter. I was telling Mr. Reaud the other night, we were talking about law. He loves talking about cases. And I don't know how we got on the subject, but I was telling him that being born in 54, we put up a mural in Houston. I wanted to pay homage to the first African-American woman on the United States Supreme Court. So I sent out a little deal to a number of artists to come up with ideas. And these artists are kind of strange. So the person is a Jewish artist. I didn't necessarily want a black artist. So she said, I want to honor Justice Ketanji Jackson Brown, but I also want to put Ruth Bader Ginsburg in the mural behind her. And she had Rosa Parks in the mural. And help me, Judge, who's the other female she had? Ginsburg, Bader, the Hispanic one, Sotomayor. And she did put Rosa Parks in. And then I said, well, you know, we done something to honor Rosa Parks in Houston. People know about Rosa Parks. Let's stick with lawyers. That's what we want to do. I want kids walking out of this low-income community in Fifth Ward, look at this mural, look up and look at those folks. I want to think, who are those women and what did they do? I happen to be a lawyer. So I said, we'll do something else to Rosa Parks. We may paint her on something else, but let's go ahead and just stick with women. She said, okay. And I said, instead of Rosa Parks, I want you to put Constance Baker Motley up. You tell your students to go and do a little research on Constance Baker Motley. First black woman in the New York State Senate, first black female to be a borough president. It's like a county commissioner in New York. And first female black federal judge in the country. She wrote the draft of the brief for Brown versus the board. Then she went on maternity leave at the Legal Defense Fund. Should have gone to a circuit bench and maybe the Supreme Court. It's a great book called Civil Rights Queen. I said, I'll just finish this book, put that one up. Had to argue with him, and finally I said, well, you know, I am the commissioner. I'm using the taxpayers' money. I'm paying for the mural. So if you don't mind, I think you're going to put her up. And then she said, but I want to add one person who's not a lawyer. Maybe could have been a lawyer. Ruby Bridges. I want you to Google her name and show your kids, if you have young kids, the story of Ruby Bridges. So I had to call and get her permission to put her face on a mural. Turns out I didn't need a permission. She didn't copyright it, but I wanted to talk to her before doing it. Ruby Bridges is my age, 3 months younger. She was the first black child in the South to go to a public school. Brown versus Board, 1954. I'm born in 1954. First one to integrate a school in the South was in New Orleans. She's the little girl in an iconic photo by Rockwell. Little black girl with the little, pickaninny hairdo. And then you see the troopers, Perry, you and Ed, your group, guarding her for a whole year. Now, what was it that made her parents decide they'd take their 6-year-old child and put her in harm's way? So we put Ruby Bridges on that mural. When I chatted with Ruby Bridges, you know what she told me? When I asked, how in the world did you make it? She said, my teachers. You know what else she said? She said, Mr. Rodney, they were all white. And no matter how many ugly things people said about me, those teachers forgot the fact that I was black. And the country and New Orleans was not ready for integration. But they believed they were teachers first. And whatever biases they had, they deal with that later. So the reason you matter is because you take those little kids, no matter what kind of hairdo they have, or if they don't have hair at all. You take them if they're fat, you take them if they're skinny, you take them if they're brown, you take them even if they're not here legally. And you take them in your classroom. And you also take all of those problems that they bring from their homes, many times raised by a grandmother or a neighbor or the foster care system. And you take those little diamonds that are pretty rough and you make something out of them. So for that, the Beaumont Foundation thanks you. Mr. Reaud thanks you. We all thank you. Because without teachers, none of us could be taught. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Senator Ed Ellis, our good friend. Thank you very much. I knew I had it here. I was struggling to find this. You inspired me to pull this great quote. There is no school equal to a decent home, and no teacher equal to a virtuous parent. Gandhi. And for me, in criminal law, whoever opens a school door closes a prison. Victor Hugo, the great novelist. All right, it's time for the presentation of the awards to the most deserving educators. I'm going to ask Chairman Wayne Reaud and President Ed Keller, please come up and join me for the presentation of the awards. And will the 5 elementary teachers please make your way to my right? Thank you. Amy Champagne, where are you, Amy? She will be our first. There you go. Our first recipient tonight is Amy Champagne. Amy is a 4th grade teacher at Highland Park Elementary in the Nederland Independent School District, where I was a school board member a long time ago, and has 13 years of teaching experience. She attended Texas A&M University, where she received a Bachelor of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies and her Master's in Educational Technology right here at Lamar University. Amy Champagne, congratulations. Next is Wendy Francois Richard. Wendy has been an elementary school teacher for 24 years. She looks so young. She is the dyslexia interventionist and after-school tutorial lead teacher at Fletcher Elementary here at the Beaumont Independent School District. She completed her Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education and Health Education and her Master's degree in Elementary Education at Prairie View A&M University. Wendy Francois Richard. Our next recipient is Tammy Halliburton. She teaches 5th grade reading and language arts and social studies. What doesn't she teach? And she serves as the 5th grade team leader at Little Cypress Intermediate School. Tammy has 10 years of teaching experience and earned her Bachelor of Science in General Studies here at Lamar University. Tammy Halliburton. Kelly Joy Litsky is an early childhood special education teacher and leads the Early Adventures Integrated Preschool Program for children with disabilities at China Elementary School in the Hardin-Jefferson Independent School District. Boy, that's a long title. My good friend Kelly has 22 years of elementary school experience teaching. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies right here at Lamar University. She just went to the dentist who told her she needed a crown, and she said, finally, someone who appreciates me. Kelly Joy Litsky. Next, Ann McMahon. Lead kindergarten teacher Ann McMahon teaches at Newton Elementary School in the Newton Independent School District. She received a Bachelor of Science in Education and Interdisciplinary Studies from Stephen F. Austin State University. Of the 34 years Ann has been a teacher, can you believe that? 34 years. She has spent 33 serving Newton Elementary School. Ann McMahon, congratulations. And will the 4 middle school teachers awardees please make your way to my right? They're coming. Here they come. Our first middle school recipient is Courtney Courts. Say that 5 times fast. Of Kuntz Middle School in the Kuntz Independent School District. Courtney has 9 years of teaching experience. She teaches 7th grade English language arts, is the 7th grade lead teacher, and serves as the English language arts department head. She attended Liberty University, where she received a Bachelor of Science in Education, and then attended our great Lamar University here, receiving her Master's of Education in Educational Administration. Courtney Courts. Lindsay Jensen. Lindsay Jensen is a Jasper Junior High School 6th through 8th grade reading interventionist and has served as the AVID team leader. A dedicated teacher who has over 20 years of teaching experience. She attended Stephen F. Austin State University, where she received her Bachelor of Science degree in Interdisciplinary Studies. Lindsay Jensen. Tammy Taylor, congratulations. Tammy is the English Language Arts and Reading Department head and 8th grade teacher at Vider Junior High School. In the 17 years she's been teaching, Tammy has taught a wide range of students from preschool special education to high school students with severe autism. She attended Lamar University, where she received her bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies. Congratulations, Tammy Taylor. Is Bill Williamson here? His wife's going to be here. Representing Bill Williamson is his wife, and I'm sorry, I don't know her first name, but you deserve to be credited. Vanessa Williamson. C.O. Wilson Middle School's Bill Williamson has 25 years experience teaching 7th and 8th grade Texas and United States history. Bill is the 8th grade U.S. history lead teacher and previously served as department chair. He received his bachelor's degree in history from the University of Houston, my alma mater for a law degree, and a master's degree from history from the University of North Texas. Congratulations, the Williamson family. Bill Williamson. And will the high school teachers please make your way to my right? Senator, you were talking about Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall Jr. is a good friend of mine. I met when I was doing a tour in Washington, D.C. A wonderful, wonderful man, and I know his father would be proud of him. And then you also mentioned our good friends Theo Johns and Elmo Willard, who have the statues in their name. And I want to tell you, Kent Johns, Theo's son, is one of our magistrates now. So I know Theo would be very proud of his son. And our first recipient in the high school category is Jenny Wynn. Jenny Wynn has taught 9th through 12th grade mathematics at Westbrook High School in the BISD for the past 6 years. Jenny is the Geometry and Algebra 1 team lead and Campus University Interscholastic Lead Coordinator. What a long title. She received her Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics here at Lamar University. Jenny Wynn, congratulations. And another wonderful friend of our family, the De La Cruzes, Shirley De La Cruz. With 22 years of teaching experience, Shirley De La Cruz is a veteran teacher. She currently teaches Algebra 1 at Nederland High School in the Nederland Independent School District and serves as the Campus University Interscholastic League Coordinator. She received her Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education and Master's in Educational Technology Leadership, yes, here at Lamar University. Congratulations, Shirley De La Cruz. Pete De La Cruz, congratulations. Great family. Next, Dr. Corkenda Griffin. Dr. Griffin has been a science instructor for over 26 years. You look so young. She currently teaches at Memorial High School in the Port Arthur Independent School District. Dr. Griffin has served as the science department head at Memorial High School and is a NASA certified master teacher with Intel Teach to the Future. She received her Bachelor of Science in Radiologic Technology at Northeast Louisiana University, her Master of Science in Educational Leadership at Troy State University, and I'm not finished, her Doctorate of Educational Leadership at the University of Phoenix. Dr. Corkenda Griffin, congratulations. Next, awardee Mindy Morse, who is the Math Department Chair and Algebra 1 instructor at Buna High School in the Buna Independent School District. She has taught 9th through 12th grade math for the past 14 years. Mrs. Morse graduated with honors when receiving her Bachelor of Business Administration and Finance right here at Lamar University. Mindy Morse. Next is Sally Rost, who is a 10th grade geometry instructor and the math department head at Orangefield High School in the Orangefield Independent School District. Sally has over 16 years of teaching experience. She received her Bachelor of Business Administration and Master of Business Administration at, altogether, Lamar University. Congratulations to you, Sally Rost. And our last awardee, but not the least by a long shot, this evening is Paul Sims. Paul teaches 9th through 12th grade special education and is the special education department head at Hardin-Jefferson High School. Mr. Sims is also the special education support liaison for all Hardin-Jefferson Independent School District campuses and has over 8 years of teaching experience. He received his Bachelor of Science degree in Interdisciplinary Studies from Sam Houston State University and his Master's in Educational Administration at Stephen F. Austin State University. Paul Sims. There are no awards left. I know Mr. Reaud, our great friend and a great servant of the people, to the people, for the people, always likes to have some closing remarks which are always inspirational. Wayne, please lead us to the end. Thank you.
almost a half a century ago, I tried lawsuits against a guy in West Texas who had a voice that sounded like God. Johnny Stevens has the same kind of voice that John Monfort had, okay? And Johnny, as a prosecutor, never lost a case. And I've always been thankful that he didn't use that voice in the civil world where I made my living, because isn't he fantastic? He's done this from the very beginning.
You do us the honor, truly. You do us the honor, all of us lawyers here.
We've been doing this for 13 years, and I've pretty much run out of things to say for 13 years. I do want you all to know that the reason that we started this was because in my life, I had 5 teachers that made a real difference. Now, I don't know how many teachers I had or professors I had from kindergarten through law school, but a bunch. But there were 5 that changed my life. And you teachers that are being honored here tonight, if you want to know what you're supposed to do, you look at what I'm going to mark as educational exhibit number 1, Rodney Ellis, and that's what you're supposed to create. He was the product of public schools. He's a poor boy like me, and he has done things in Texas that you all will never know and you'll never appreciate. I cannot tell you how great the man is and how much the people of Texas owe him, because I want you to know that fellow right there doesn't look bad. He's bad. I don't know who's going to be madder at me when I tell this story. It's either going to be Senator Ellis or it's going to be Starla. And I've been debating all night whether I tell the story, but I've decided to tell it. Rodney, bless his heart, he lives on this street in Houston where only rich people live. Not moderately rich people, but rich people, okay? And he's a product of, as I said, a very poor family, and his father was a yard man, and Rodney always thought that no one could do his yard as good as he could. And he took great pride in taking care of his own yard. And so he's out in front of this mansion. And I tell you, I was just there last week and drove by. It is a mansion. And I'm so proud for him. We'd all like to have a mansion like Senator Ellis has. And he's out there in that front yard working and sweating. And this very dignified white lady in a fancy car pulls up front. And you know where I'm going, don't you? And she's looking at Senator Ellis at the time out there sweating and working that yard, and she says, young man, would you come here, please? And so he goes over there, and she says, you do such a nice job on the yard. I live right down the street. How much would you charge me to come do my yard? Ellis, who I told you is bad, you don't ever want to cross him. He looks at her and he says, well, ma'am, that's hard for me to say because the lady here, she lets me sleep with her. So I... I'm so thankful for you being here tonight to come over here. You bless us with your presence. I want you all to truly know, and I'm not saying this because he's here. He is my friend, and I'm his. And of all the nice things I could say about him, wonderful things, there's nothing that I could say which would be as meaningful to me as you're my friend for decades. I love you, and thank you. Okay?
So it's settled. We're all going to Rodney's house. Right. Thank you all for being here this evening. I would like to close, I don't know how you top this wonderful event, with just 2 things. Number 1, thank you, Reaud Foundation. Thank you, Wayne Reaud. Thank you, Ed Keller, Rob Kraft, Hannah Ward, and your wonderful team. Y'all do a great thing honoring great people who do great work. That's so important, as we've heard from these great statements made by great leaders. And I want to leave us all with the following remarks made by one of my most favorite historical heroes and the reverends as well, Frederick Douglass, a man who went from slave to the personal counselor to the President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. He wrote, "Education means emancipation. It means light and liberty. It means the uplifting of our souls into the glorious light of truth, the light by which people can only be made free." Good night, and again, may God bless the Reaud Foundation. We are going home to Rodney's house now. Let's go. Thank you again. See you next year. See you next year.